is not a boy. Chapter 8, Holidays, Part 2. But in the long summer holidays, Mum had a bigger change than ever. You see, Auntie Martha organised our Sunday school trip. I saved up my pocket money, which wasn't very much. And as you know, I worked on the farm with all the other kids, but we didn't get paid because it was our livelihood. So I didn't have much money, and it took me a long time to save. One year we were going to Scarborough, and that was further than we'd ever been before. We were going out of East Yorkshire for the first time ever, which was very different for all of us. It would be even more of a change than Sundays at Elm Tree Cottage. And because we were going away, my dad said that anything could happen. On the day of this trip, Mum was up earlier than she usually was. She went to help with the milking and then made us some sammies for our packed lunch. First of all, she cut the brown bread with thick crusts on them and filled them with mashed boiled eggs. We always had boiled eggs because they were cheap. Well, they didn't cost us anything because we had lots of hens on the farm, and I always remember to lock them up at night nowadays and keep the fox away. Then Mum cooked Dad's breakfast. He always had eggs and bacon from our slaughtered pigs. And while Mum was rushing about, we were getting ready and putting on our sundresses. She'd made them specially. At the last minute, I remembered my bucket and spade and searched frantically under stairs and went deeper and deeper to the back with my own back bent. There they were on the floor next to Dad's gun. I grabbed them quickly and ran outside where Dad was waiting impatiently, revving our van's engine. He was in a hurry because he wanted to get back to his animals and get on with his work. And today he wouldn't have Mum to help, so everything would be harder for him. But then, at another last minute, Mum remembered our Macs and dashed inside to get them in case it rained. Then we were finally ready, and our van rushed off, bumping along the country road to Main Street in Ringham. We could see our yellow bus waiting. It was not the serviceable blue of our East Yorkshire school buses. No, this was the holiday bus. This little country bus was bright yellow all over. I clambered up the steep steps, and there was Susie already in a seat waiting for me. Uncle George, her dad, had given her £50, so she was very pleased. We settled down in fuzzy yellow seats that had black shells woven on them to remind us of the seaside. We were so excited, but as we stared through the window, I could see heavy grey skies. "Look out for enough blue sky to make a pair of sailor's trousers," shouted Mary hopefully. "Then it'll be a fine day." We all looked, and I thought I could see just a thin strip of blue. But even Mum, who was very clever with pieces of material, could not make a pair of trousers from that. Even if it was a very thin sailor, she couldn't do it with such a tiny blue remnant. But I kept on staring and hoping that my little patch of blue would get bigger, while our bus filled with people and families crowding on to go on holiday to Scarborough. Dads didn't come on our trip. They were busy working, But Mums and Grandmas came. Except our Grandma, she didn't come because she thought, like Dad, that it was safer to stay at home. But all the Sunday school kids came, of course, even naughty Charlie with his big loping brother Lenny and 2 older brothers. Their grandma came as well, and she heaved up the steps. But then, to everybody's surprise, Charlie's dad got on. It was most unusual for dads to come because they were all at work. But not Charlie's dad, who was always very quiet and usually sat about doing nothing. I saw Mam look at him, and she must have been thinking the same as me, because she frowned. But then Charlie's dad winked at her, and she looked away quickly. Suddenly, our bus engine took a heaving, throbbing breath. "Everybody here!" shouted the driver, throwing his cigarette butt out of the window. And then he pushed the great gear lever, and we jutted off, grunting and groaning down Main Street. We waved at the empty houses as we left, and then after that Susie and I settled in our seats. We opened our purses and looked at our money, and then we tried to throw our Macs up onto the luggage rack, but it was already filled, and it was filled with other people's Macs and other people's Sammies. So we sat back down again and just played. At first we played quiet games like I Spy that we did on Sundays at Elm Tree. But then Charlie, who was sitting at the back with all the other naughty boys, started singing. We all joined in. "How much is that doggy in the window?" they started with, and it reminded me of my 3 Little Puppies book that I hadn't finished reading yet. But we sang the songs at the top of our voices until we couldn't sing any more, and then we sat quietly again, tired out, with our bus grunting and groaning on its way to Scarborough. I looked out of the window, and I saw that the heavy grey clouds were rolling away, and great patches of blue were being woven into the sky. Now there was easily enough for Mam to make a pair of trousers, even for a fat sailor. Sorry, Mam. And we might not need our Macs after all. Ages and ages later, we tumbled into the bus park in Scarborough. Then we all trudged off down a lane, carrying heavy baskets and food, with towels in as well, and swimming things, and of course our Macs, just in case it rained. We walked for ages, down and down. Then suddenly we were there, and the sand and sea were waiting for us. And now the sun shone down warmly, and we settled ourselves into a space on the sands. Mam got some striped deck chairs, and we put our swimming cozies on. None of us could swim, of course, but when we were at the seaside, we always wore our cozies of shining elastic, bumpy swimming costumes that our mums had made us. Susie and me dug in the sand. We made huge castles and decorated them with shells. We ran to the sea and brought water back for a moat to go round our castles. After we'd had our packed lunch, Susie and me went for some ice cream. We went to a van on the sands. Charlie's dad was there at the van. He was waiting to buy an ice cream. Well, at least I thought that's why he was there. But he seemed to have forgotten what he'd come for and was just standing there. Anyway, he let us go first, and we both bought a cornet. And of course, it tasted a lot better than the ice cream that I'd had in the hospital when I had my tonsils out and I could hardly eat the ice cream because my throat was so sore. Then Susie and me put our sundresses back on and we went off to spend the rest of our money. We had a great time looking at all the shops on the prom. And in a sweet shop there was a paper plate set out with eggs and bacon, just like Dad's for breakfast, but this time it was made from seaside rock, if you see what I mean. And there were hundreds of things for you to buy. You just couldn't decide what to choose. In the end, Susie bought a red hair slide and a little ring with a red stone in that matched her dress. I didn't like red anymore, not after my lamb had to be sold and I had to have a red coat with the money. I didn't like red, but I didn't tell Susie, of course. 2 fat ladies, 88, shouted the bingo man from his little round stall with a tent roof, where families sat staring at their number tray. My mam would not like him saying fat, and anyway she said bingo was not the thing you played if you wanted to get on in the world, so we never played. Try your luck, shouted the man, and he winked at me and pushed a tray on a string towards us. But we ran off and nearly tripped over each other, laughing. It was very crowded, and Susie was ready to go back to the others now she'd finished shopping. I watched her join our families on the sand, and then I went back along the prom and concentrated a long time in looking for something special. Suddenly, there it was. It was a little Scotty dog, a little yellow plastic Scotty dog with a loop that would go on my charm bracelet. It reminded me of my story and that little dog sitting there all alone with no home to go to, as if he was lost. Of course I bought it there and then I dashed back to get the egg and bacon rock on a plate as a present for Dad, and then I'd spent up. Now I was ready to go back to our group on the sands, but suddenly even more people seemed to have come and crowded in, and I couldn't see anybody I knew anywhere. I was lost.